Hello, Ben.
Hello, Chazi. How's it going?
Bless the Lord. Things are going fairly well, thank God.
How do you work with the clients?
How is work with the clients? Um, Good. I had a little tense conversations today with one client. It's a complicated project that's been going on for 3 years, and we did not get a lot of headway because of the client permits and changing stuff and doing things. And we had to have a call of a restructuring, asking for more money, which is never fun. He handled it fairly well. He asks a lot of questions, which is fine. But I sort of explained to him that when I take on projects, like I didn't think when I took on your project 3 years ago that we're like now there's like many years left to do it. Like I'll be finishing this project like into my 40s. Right? So I said, you understand like the mindset of that? Like so he like started cracking up. I'm like, because that's ridiculous. You understand that like it's more about 1 year. It's just like I'm becoming a new person through your project.
Yeah.
So yeah, he understood. So we'll see where that goes. And then it's difficult. We don't have to get too deep into this, but I was talking to some other project manager, and it's always an internal argument with me and my partner as well. If for example, I created a budget for a client, and now we're shopping, and now the client says like, "Hey, I want Hermes plates." So most people, even if they're not getting like a commission or a kickback, if that's what the client wants, then sure, great. I have like a very hard time allowing my clients to do that. Like I'll push back. I'll be like, why are you spending so much money on a plate?
Yeah.
And because of that, like I think my clients appreciate it, but it sort of limits the design. And I don't understand how other people feel confident to just how are you allowing them to do this? Did they not hire you also to protect their interests? And he's now in my certain case, I have like this built-in conflict of interest because I'm also the architect designer and I'm also the project manager. Now, my go-to line is, if you'd like to spend more money, just tell me that. Say those words. I want to spend more. And like anyone I say that to, they laugh. The clients are never going to tell you that, it's like a dance and you have to like, but it's not my dance to dance. Like it's my job to try to trick you into like spending things that you're not sure that you could spend, but you can't spend. Like, why can't you be an adult? Why can't you just say like, I want the more expensive marble? And
right.
I know
because people sometimes don't know what they want, right?
I understand that
out of them.
I get that, but then I would ask them, like, I understand you might want me to push you for more, like a bigger design. But before I even get to that conversation, do you want to spend more money? And like, that's sort of like, I tell them, like, the manager wears the largest hat unless you tell me otherwise. Like the designer is here. I could think of a lot of great ideas, but didn't you tell me? And I know this is a problem with myself. Like I'm talking to a client today and he says, ooh, that item seems expensive. If that item seems expensive, then there's no reason for us to go to store X because everything's more expensive there. Now I understand in reality, some might be like, yeah, Chazi, for that item, it's more expensive. But for this item, like I am okay to spend more money. To me, that's sort of like, it doesn't compute like in my head. And I guess I just need to get over, but like, it's difficult. Again, thank God business is great and it's not an issue, but I would like to have the freedom to be able to be like, oh yeah, sure. If you want to do that, get that. If you want to design this, we'll do that. But I don't know, I take them seriously. They tell me like they're working very hard on like, helping this organization. I have another way where you could help them. Don't buy this Sub-Zero fridge, and that's another $20,000 you could give them.
Yeah.
Better. But these should be my problems. Everything's good. We should, first of all, before I go there, how are you doing? Work's okay? Family's okay?
Yeah, pretty good. It's pretty stormy today, so I ended up just changing all my plans, and staying.
There's something nice about staying cozy and at home.
Mm-hmm. But it's nice.
And I guess in general, how has your journey been so far?
It's been good. It's been very interesting. But I mean, like dealing with various different things. So I find it very illuminating or guiding in its way. So it's very relevant to everything else. I find it very relevant to everything else that I encounter. And
your
it
wife's
connects
journey?
with different things. Sorry.
And your wife's journey?
I think the same. I mean, it's hard to speak for her, but yeah, I mean, we're also like in a new city. So, we're trying to find our own community. So doing that within the prism, within the focus that we have on doing something that's more closer also to Judaism connects in a way or focuses that, but it's all kind of like the same kind of like effort and challenge. But it's been good. I think I can feel the effects in terms of just the things that we like as a family, or just like the connections that I'm making and the things that we're doing. So that's nice.
Does she have I don't want to even call it like an outlet. It's more like an inlet. But like, does she have a space where she could be doing like experiencing this, learning, taking on more?
Somewhat less so. Yeah, in a different way than me. But there is.
She's obviously welcome to join. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people obviously have different ways that they connect to these things, and different things that they find motivating. It's kind of like, I feel like that's one of the maybe the connections that we can make to what you said about the people willing to pay a bigger price for one item versus the other. Like some people are more motivated to take an effort, to sacrifice for one thing rather than another thing. So like engaging in this is effortful because it's new people. It's not something they did before. So I feel like, for me, I might be more motivated to do this. For her, she might have other channels she might want to go into, or she does go into, but she's more motivated there. So she's willing kind of like to do that more.
Well, the offer still stands that if she'd want to do something more specifically tailored to her, I'll be glad to do so. But I totally understand if she's looking for different cats. Just as a side note, I don't know if you were aware of Pninei Halacha by Rav Melamed.
Pninei Halacha? I don't think so.
So Pninei Halacha is a fantastic series of book. There's something called the Shulchan Aruch, which is like a famous, right? And then there's a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which became like the small version that people had in their house. So Pninei Halacha is like the new version of that, which is beautifully written and easily understandable and accessible halacha books for like on all different types of topics. But if you are in your journey sort of looking for where's like sort of a guidebook I could go to, but not necessarily be like lost within like the footnotes and have something spelled out like in a beautiful way. So I am a very, very big proponent of him. So yes.
I'll recommend look at that as
well. He has, I'll just show you 1 second. So it looks like this. This would be like a classic one, right? This is like Shabbos A, and it has like Hachanot LaShabbat, Hadlakat Nerot, Zmanei Shabbat, Kiddush, Seudah, Torah, Tefillah, gives like the whole thing aside.
Yeah.
And he also has this, which is like just gives you like a whole breakdown of the whole Jewish like tradition, basically.
Yeah.
and also written very beautifully. Again, recommended. There's many of them. I have like a whole set for my kids. There's like one that's like with like cartoons and stuff, which I think actually, I don't know, it's not racist, but like I guess the way they draw Asians over there is like sort of racist. It's okay. Okay. So Shmuel the Small. Shmuel the Small.
So yeah, that was,
that's what we finished last week.
So
right, we spoke about how one doesn't want to be. We spoke about the difference, what's the word in English over here, between rejoicing and being gladdened, and how one, when one falls, you could be glad, but you can't be happy, because glad is temporary. And when someone like fails fully, you can't even be glad. Right. And we also spoke about how the enemy over here doesn't mean Hamas, right? It means a political enemy, or someone going against me for being in charge of the union head in my company, right? So we have different ideologies, but like he is my enemy with regards to like the current context we're in. But it could benefit me if he doesn't win. But then, like, we want to separate between me being happy that I get to succeed, between me having like animosity towards him, a personal dislike to him, right? So we want to differentiate between two of those things.
Hey.
We learned
what chapter are we on?
We are moving on to Kaf, which is number 20, and we're just doing a small little
of chapter 4 in the Mishnah.
Chapter 4, Mishnah 20.
Do I have to put my cam on like this, or?
No, you don't have to have your cam on, Kirk.
Yeah, today weather was really bad, so the schools around my region in Mississippi are canceled. They're having like a storm.
Yeah, Ben is telling me about the storm as well. Here in Israel, it was a beautiful day, even though it's clearly winter. Having said that, due to the unique situation Israel's in and the war Israel's in, it is actually doing very well that there's no rain, so the soldiers don't have to fight in the mud or be cold. So I hope God continues to bless Israel with what it needs agriculturally, and I hope that on the other hand, on the field, we're also successful. Okay, let's scroll down to number 20.
Could I read this one, or?
Sure, take it away, buddy.
I can't read Hebrew, but can I just read the English?
So I'll read the Hebrew, and then you'll read it in English, all right?
Okay.
Elisha ben Avuya Omer, halomed Torah, ילד למה הוא דומה. לדיו כתובה על נייר חדש. והלומד תורה, זקן למה הוא דומה. לדיו כתובה על נייר מחוק. רבי יוסי בר יהודה, איש כפר הבבלי, אומר, הלומד תורה מן הקטנים למה הוא דומה, לאוכל ענבים כהות ושותה יין מגיתו. והלומד תורה מן הזקנים למה הוא דומה, לאוכל ענבים בשולות ושותה יין ישן. That's a long one. רבי מאיר אומר, אל תסתכן בקנקן, אלא במה שיש בו. יש קנקן חדש מלא ישן, וישן שאפילו חדש אין בו. Kirk, so you'll read through it once, and then we'll break it down through because this is a long one, through the 3 different sections. Go ahead.
Elisha, the son of Avuya, would say, one who learns Torah in his childhood, what is this comparable to? To ink inscribed on fresh paper. One who learns Torah in his old age, what is this comparable to? To ink inscribed on erased paper.
Well, let's start there. We'll continue going into the next one. Okay, so we've mentioned this. Yeah, Kirk.
I think the point here is that if you absorb wisdom at a younger age, it is like you are, I guess, like you're fresh off the press, so ink inscribed on erased paper. So I suppose the idea is, if you learn Torah at an old age, you as the paper of your mind, your paper could, survive all the previous writings and all the erasings, and now like new wisdom.
Right. So we'll break that down now. First, let's just give some context for who we're dealing with over here. We're dealing with Elisha ben Avuya, Elisha son of Avuya, which we've spoken about many times before, but it's always good. We always come about it from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. So we'll focus on Elisha ben Avuya specifically for a second, famously known as Acher, the other. One of, it's a very tragic story, of course, what happened to him. One of the great sages, so much so that he's not even called rabbi. At that time, there's Rav, there's Rabbi, there's Rabban. Not having a Rav in front of you meant that you're at that period even higher status than, let's say, a Rav or a rabbi. They didn't even need to say the fact that you're a rabbi. It was understood. A student of and a student friend, Talmid Chaver, it's known as, like a very, very close student and / friend with Rabbi Akiva. He famously he was born a few years before the destruction of the temple. He was from a rich family, with a Torah scholar. He was known, though, to be, in Hebrew, I'm just translating it in English, he would always be whistling a Greek tune. And the sense of that was that he was very involved with the Greek culture at the time.
Was he?
Go ahead.
Was he considered more like liberal and like tolerant towards other religions and philosophies?
No, not well. He was known as, they said that Sifrei Haminim Noshrim Mimeno, the philosophy books, or let's say the heresy books, would fall from his satchel. And that is to sort of give an example where, while Rabbi Akiva and others managed to learn the heresy books and still maintain their composure and still maintain their orientation, here, these books were falling from him because he was too weak to manage to handle that sort of tension. Going into the Pardes, into these mystical realms, he famously sees the story. He sees the archangel Metatron, who is a very powerful angel, and he sees him sitting on the throne of God, and he's judging as well. And this was confusing for, philosophically confusing and theologically confusing for Elisha ben Avuya, because this brings up the whole two powers in heaven. This is also happening in the backdrop of Bar Kochva, or Bar Kusiba, dying, who Rabbi Akiva thought was the Messiah. And this also was very detrimental to the theology of Elisha ben Avuya. After this happened, he was extremely, extremely upset about this. So much so, he decides to leave Judaism, and he helps the Romans chase the Jews. So he was definitely hated for a while. As he got older, he sort of made his way back into Judaism. A famous student of his was, Rabbi Meir was a very big student of his. He had opportunities in his conversations with Rabbi Meir to repent. However, he said that he heard from behind the curtain, behind the pargod in the heavens, that he can never repent. He's gone too far. And when he dies, the Gemara gives us a story that he was in limbo, and his grave was smoking. And the rabbis of that time saved him by praying for God to remove him from limbo and accept him in the world, into the world to come. Sure.
I didn't know Jews believed in limbo.
It's not like a place called limbo. The point was that he wasn't in hell and he wasn't in heaven. He was like sort of stuck. Hence he was, and this is sort of very apropos to what we're reading over here. Seemingly, he would believe into this line we see over here that that the one who is in old age is comparable to ink inscribed on erased paper, right? So we'll explain what that means. But in a certain way, Elisha ben Avuya saw himself that way, which is once the paper has been used too many times, there's no repenting at that point. Whether that's true or not, we'll get into, but maybe that's even hinting to why we're reading it over here.
Right, like so that means in terms of the Dio al Niyar Machuk, it's less it's less pure, or it's less. It's harder
Right.
to tell what it is.
So we'll jump into that now. I'll just end with it's a personal tidbit because my in-laws have a place up there up north near Kfar Chitim. That's where the tradition is that he's buried. Even though at the same place we also have a tradition that Jethro is buried, or the way the Arabs call him, Nabi Shwaub. This is up north in Israel. Okay, so that's the character we're dealing with, Elisha ben Avuya. Very, very interesting guy. And he tells us that we're talking about Halomet Torah, right? Yeled lema hu domeh ledio katuv al niyar chadash, ve'halomet Torah zaken lema hu domeh ledio katuv al niyar machuk. Okay, so the child over here is seemingly, we're talking about fresh ink over here, a clear pad of paper over here. So the ideas make sense. You know what I mean? It's very fresh. It's very clear what things are being written down. There's room on the page for many ideas, for novel ideas, right? It's a new page. So this is very exciting. And what's more important, there's still no wrong ideas on the page that need to be forgotten or crossed out, right? So seemingly we're saying like, this is fantastic. Let's start fresh, right? We use these terminology all the time. Let's start fresh in the morning. Let's open up a new pad of paper, right? So we're giving ourselves sort of a clean slate. And on clean slates, there's room for potential. On the flip side, we have the senior citizen over here, and we're saying the used paper is already used. It's not clear. There isn't more room on the paper itself. One is that it's not clear because I've written a lot of things. Number two, it's not clear because it's very hard for me to write on top of the typos, right? If you imagine yourself writing on a page that you've already written on many times, there's already indentations with your pen, right? So now as I'm writing, I could skip a note, it could jump. So it's not allowing me to in this analogy, move from point A to B smoothly, okay? And like I said, again, this is why he thought he couldn't necessarily repent, because maybe he saw himself as a used piece of paper.
Right. It's like people saying, I know too much. Like when they tell you, why don't you why don't you come back? It's like, I know too much. I can't do that.
I know too much. Like, I've seen too much. I can't go back to that innocence of youth, so to speak, right? But the innocence of youth, at least in this portion, we're saying that's ideal, right? And the innocence of youth, I could explore, I could learn. There's rooms to make mistakes and still have room on the page. So, okay, so that's understandable. Let's now, Kirk, if you would oblige us reading.
I'll read it.
Yeah, in English.
Rabbi Yossi, the son of Judah of Kafar Habavli, would say, "One who learns Torah from youngsters, whom is he comparable to? To one who eats unripe grapes and drinks unfermented wine from the press. One who learns Torah from the old, whom is he comparable to? To one who eats ripened grapes and drinks aged wine."
Okay, so first, Yossi Habavli, it's just a family joke. Like I have many cousins, so I have like Chazi HaYerushalmi, Natan HaShamroni. So we all used our names because he was known from this place, Kfar Bavel, which actually, historically speaking, we're not really sure where that is in Israel, Kfar Bavli. Like, I don't know if it was named because like it had a certain name, or more probably because there were many people from Babylon living there in that neighborhood, so it was known as Kfar Habavli. And this is like a little before Judah the Prince, right? So this is before we're writing the Mishnah down. That's his context. Is there anything else interesting about Yossi Habavli? Not that I recall. Okay, so here we have seemingly a different opinion, right? Because we just said earlier, the youngsters rock, the senior citizens less so. And here we have, what are you talking about, Chazi? The grapes, they didn't ripen yet, right? Which obviously the analogy is very clear. The wine, was maybe it was squeezed out. Like we said over here, it's not unfermented, right? We still don't have all the wine characteristics that we're looking for, right? The smell of oak, and it was sitting inside a burnt, casket for 17 years. And also, it's very palpable when we say it's not sweet, right? So like it still hasn't reached its full potential. So there could be a brilliant child, right? but there's no life experience. The words he's saying, we don't know if they even map onto reality yet.
Yeah.
They come with less gravitas when they're coming from a child. So, and there's obviously quite reasonable why you would be cautious taking advice from someone very young. And on the flip side, of course, sorry, you were going to say something, Kirk?
Well, for instance, this is one of the reasons why I believe that there are many halakhic opinions which say that young people who are like under the age of 40, for example, should not learn Kabbalah. Like,
you are correct. However,
their minds are not developed enough to understand it.
You are correct. Do you know how old the Arizal, the Ari, was when he died?
I think like 55 or something.
38. Right? So he's 38 when he dies, and yet he is the game changer as far as with regards to Kabbalah.
An old soul.
I believe it was the Shach who said it. You should be 40.
No, I agree with you, and we're also going to touch upon that. My point is just
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying that's like an opinion many people have.
That is, without a doubt, that is the written opinion. One second, one of my kids' marbles rolling on the floor, and it's driving me crazy. Where is it? My point was that even the people that spearheaded Kabbalah in modern times, relatively speaking, they themselves weren't even 40. So it could be perhaps what we're saying over here. It's less about the specific age and more about the mindset. But we'll see this in a minute. We already see this tension building up because we started with Elisha ben Avuya telling us one thing, and now we already see Rav Yossi is contradicting this, right? So the older person is deep, rich, tasting Torah, right? Tried and true. Much better blends. If we're continuing with like this wine conversation over here, it's been fermented longer. It's 18 years old. It's fantastic Scotch, right? So these are things that we could understand. These are things that, like we said, they have stood the test of time. So there's a sense which is like this makes a lot more sense to go with the older Torah scholar over here over the child. And we have to understand why we have this contradiction over here. And we could say that when one is, because it could be both, right? Which is in classic Chazal style. We could have youthful knowledge, which is very good at acquiring like basic knowledge, right? But that's not great at acquiring like the detail and complex like structures of things. And when we're acquiring like fundamental and basic knowledge, there's something about the readiness of the person to be accepting that. So it's less about how much knowledge he has. It's more about the readiness to learn, the openness to learn. And generally speaking, kids have that openness, right? And also, obviously, they have a lot more neural plasticity. Like I'm talking from like a scientific point of view. We see this with kids learning languages. They're a lot more open to taking on this new information. However, on the flip side, when studying like complex structures or that require intense analytical thinking. So here it requires someone that possesses more tools to deal with this, more accuracy, which usually is going to mean someone that is older as well.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I totally understand what you're saying. It's interesting to think of this also just in a different angle, in addition to the previous Mishnah. In terms of the previous Mishnah was about the ideal way to learn is as a child, right? Which is comparable to like having humility, like just coming up, or like if I'm thinking about like bitul, about annulling yourself, right? You don't have anything. You're just allowing yourself to absorb, like a sponge, which is, I guess, something that we're also gonna cover soon. And here in this mission, it kind of talks about. Maybe it talks about studying from. So you're studying from. You might want to learn as somebody as a child, as a new person, but you want to study from something that's a little bit more aged.
Right. So I hear that distinction. There's acquiring basic knowledge, right, which is just like as a child, but then there's like studying, which requires more accuracy, it's less about the readiness and more about understanding the complexity of like once you're engaging in study. So yeah, so that would be a good example where you could have that division. And lastly, we say, which sort of wraps this all up, and this is obviously a very famous saying, Rabbi Omer, Al tistakel bakankan, ela bema sheyesh bo. Yesh kankan chadash, mala yashan, veyashan shafilu chadash en bo. Kirk, do you want to take that in English?
Said Rabbi Meir, no connection to Kahana. Look not at the vessel, but at what it contains. There are new vessels that are filled with old wine, and old vessels that do not even contain new wine.
Exactly. So this is the original version of "Don't judge a book by its cover." Right. So this is where we're getting that from. But kankan is, like we said, like this vessel over here. So here we see again this it's stressing the point that the dichotomy between older and younger is basically is kind of arbitrary, right? And it's more about the division that's an internal division, right? So, and we shouldn't be judging the age of the vessel, but what's its content, what's inside. So we could find, and we know these people, we find older individuals that are capable of embracing like a new view and pivoting and changing.
Yeah.
And it's great. So they're young at heart. And we know young children or young adults that have an old soul, so to speak, and have a tremendous amount of wisdom. And that relates to what I was saying about the Ari, right? So yes, you should learn when you're 40. And that means when you are an adult. Does it mean when you're physically 40 years old? Maybe not. Maybe it means like when you are 30 years old, but we know that the individual here can handle that because he is mature. 40 is there to symbolize maturity and is there and definitely in earlier times is also there as a warning sign, right? Also, people didn't necessarily live that long. So that's like later on in your life. The point was do this later on when you're older. So it's less about 40 exactly, but more about when internally you are wise enough or mature enough.
Yeah, I've been told I'm relatively mature for my age.
You're relatively mature for your age. I think you are definitely a smart individual and at times very mature. And you should keep on growing that way as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with this position. Like, I don't necessarily think your physical age matters as much as your dispensation personality wise, personally.
Agreed. However, I would say with regards to Kabbalah, but to many other things, right? Like you could be the most mature person in the world, Kirk, right? However, I would say if you told me like I want to study Kabbalah, I would say, but before studying Kabbalah, it would be important to understand the dynamic of husband and wife and father and mother. And that's nothing to do with wisdom. That's just not, you haven't been in that context yet. So there could be the most brilliant man. I'm not going to trust him right now about flying the plane because he's just not aware of any of those scenarios. So while someone could be very mature and engage in conversations such as this, like even in this little corner, one still has to recognize his limitations, whether they be intellectual or whether they be experiential.
I mean, I recognize my limitations, and I think everybody should. I think as long as you have a grounding with wise teachers, I don't necessarily believe you should be so restrictive in what you explore in life.
You should just do so. You should tread carefully. You might read, like you just said, you're going to have your teachers. So obviously, vadai, that's great. But if while you're doing your own thing that one Wednesday afternoon, you might read something and misinterpret or misunderstand, and due to the lack of experience, you might have a knee-jerk reaction to say like, "Oh, I think it means X." Again, my point is everyone should judge ultimately for himself, and obviously, when learning very deep and complicated things, one should of course attempt to get advice and guidance from the relevant rabbis. Hala, number 21.
Rabbi Eliezer HaKapor would say, envy, lust. Rabbi Eliezer HaKapor would say, envy, lust, and honor drive a man from the world.
Rabbi Elazar HaKapar אומר, הקנאה והתאווה והכבוד מוציאים את האדם מן העולם. Okay, always these tense sentences. Mishnah's Rabbi Eliezer Kafar, he lived up north. I'm embarrassed for not remembering this right now. I can't remember if it's in Gamla or if it's in Katsrin, but in one of these sites which tourists could go to, they actually found this this rock, this stone from the study hall of, it says, Beit Midrash of Rabbi Eliezer Kapar. So
Really?
it's very cool that we found this. But I can't remember if it's in the old Katsrin synagogue or if it was in Gamla, which is nearby, but they're both up north. And kafar, hakafar is not like what we said earlier, kfar being village. Hakafar here, I believe, means like he was into tarring, I think.
Into what?
Tar. One
Tar.
second. No, I could be wrong. Is there hakafar? Is there? Hakafar. Kinui kafar kame atzaot. Achanat zefet. Okay, good. Tar. Some say he was making wine. Some people call it. Oh, he was from the kfar, the village, kfira. Not kfira as heresy.
Yeah.
A different kind of kfira. Okay. I was aware of the tar one. So you'll excuse me if I was not aware of the other two. Okay, so he tells us over here. So off the bat, we could see like there's like our gradation over here, which some have correlated with our stages in life, right? As children, young children, we are sort of overwhelmed by jealousy, generally speaking. In a middle age and hormones, we are sort of enveloped by lust. And as we get older, we start seeking and wanting respect. However, let's try to dive in specifically to all these three. So, and the breakdown that the rabbis give is so envy, lust, and honor connect to soul, body, and intellect. So, with envy, which relates to the soul, it is basically showing a lack of internal guidance. Right. So I define myself by the others and their own values, and I'm lacking like my own inner strength, even when it relates to personal matters. So that's why envy is very, very poisonous and detrimental. With regards to lust, and its correlation to the body obviously makes sense. And this represents the overwhelming physical desires that people go through. And a person that's driven by lust, and he wants like beyond the physical gratification. He just wants constantly more and more and more. And this is connected also to his body as well. And lastly, we have the pursuit of honor, the kavod. And this generally speaking means wanting to be praised for your intellect, right? So I'm seeking, again, externally seeking validation from others. And this is a sign of distorted wisdom, right? If I need to be validated by others, if I need others to recognize my wisdom, this is obviously a power. And yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
I was just curious, how would you distinguish between honor in an unjust way and in a bad way and in a healthy way with healthy self-esteem?
Oh, good questions from Kirk. So you could say in honor, right? Just like you're saying, if it's self-respected and free from envy or lust, right? Seeking honor can be positive. And I'm reflecting on even my inner greatness in a certain sense. And the Torah has a term for that called kinat sofrim, the jealousy of scribes or writers. And the attitude is not because I'm jealous of you, but I am so impressed by what you produced, and I'm impressed with what I produce, but not because I need external validation, because I recognize its value. So, and also, of course, a healthy self-esteem, a healthy sense of ego. We spoke about this in a very different Mishnayot, where there are some rabbis that believe that there's room for no ego. However, others believe that there is some room for some ego. And you could even see this in the interpretation of that God would speak through Moses' throat. We say "V'yedaber metoch grono," and
Right.
people ask, like, what does this mean? So some people say, like, because he was so humble and he completely nullified himself and removed all ego, he could be completely filled with God. On the flip side, others say no, because Moses was so sure of himself and so self-aware that it allowed him then to feel confident to speak in God's name, right? So again, these would be...
Yeah, the Rambam talks about it in terms of, like, if we talk about like self-esteem or kavod, the honor, in terms of
right,
not being humble in the right way, right? So that I just read this thing about, somebody posed a question about, if Moses is so exceedingly humble, why does, and he also wrote the Torah, why does he say that Moses was exceedingly humble more than any man on the face of the earth? That's written in the Torah, so ostensibly he wrote it. So that's a little bit weird. But like you said, the idea is that you recognize the potential and impact that you have or could have, and you take responsibility without remembering what its true source is. So,
but that's a rope walk, right? It's a tight walk, walk to walk. And to your question, Kirk. So again, if I'm pursuing it because of because I have no self-esteem, and I'm and it's, I have this compulsion to do this. This is ultimately gonna, like, lead me to like a bitter end, and also spiritually, like, I'll feel like exile. Like I don't even recognize myself anymore. So we do want there to be some sort of healthy level of self-esteem, but we want to obviously move away from, again, connecting it with envy or lust. And by the way, the same thing goes to, like, if a person has lust, right? Well, what happens? I see some beautiful woman go by, and this is the urge that takes over me. If that's the only thing I'm dealing with, and that physical imbalance, I could correct that. But once it's combined with envy, for example, it's almost like an inescapable downfall, right? It prevents my soul from recovering when I'm being envy. And that's why it's turning something that's like a temporary sin of just being like momentarily lustful. It turns it into like, it brings me into like this destructive downward spiral because I'm envy about it as well. So the Mishnah is not only telling us like 1, 2, and 3 are problematic, but also combinations of them are also problematic.
Yeah, could I relate a story?
Please.
So I was reading on Chabad.org a story of the Chofetz Chaim, where the Chofetz Chaim was like in a yeshiva, and a student was smoking on Shabbos, and so the yeshiva dean and all the people wanted to say, "We're going to kick you out." I mean, we can't have this in a yeshiva. And then the man was sent to the Chofetz Chaim, with the pack of cigarettes, and the Chofetz Chaim was just crying, like all over the man's hands. And one of the things the story relates is that man would never violate Shabbos again, because he was upset that such a great man would like have this appointment in him. In that sense, what I'm trying to relate to that story is that the Chofetz Chaim, he wasn't envious of him, but rather he was he recognized his greatness and wanted to live up to his standards. If that makes sense. So it's not necessarily bad to want to live up to other people's standards who are greater, but it's bad if you define your entire personality based on other people.
Correct. Because if it's all happening externally, then there is no you anymore, right? And ultimately, you have to be dealing with, your you, right? So you have to be dealing with that. I concur. Next.
So
mission.
just a final thing here, just in terms of drive a man from the world, mutzi'in et adam min ha'olam. Is there any significance for him using that specific language?
Or like, well, yeah, that has to do with the external, right? Like you, like if you are judging yourself by the olam, right, and you are forgetting yourself right now, you're letting the external jealousy take over, the external lust take over, the external pursuit on honor. Right. Ultimately, you find yourself removed from this world because that is what you're judging yourself by the world.
Right. And you're like separate from the world, or like you are the source.
You are separating yourself.
Yeah.
Intense words. Kaf bet, number 22. Hu haya omer. הילודים למות והמתים לחיות. והחיים לדון, לידע, להודיע ולהיוודע. שהוא אל, הוא היוצר, הוא הבורא, הוא המבין, הוא הדיין, הוא העד, הוא בעל דין, הוא עתיד לדון. ברוך הוא שאין לפניו עוולה ולא שכחה ולא משוא פנים ולא מקח שוחד, ודע שהכל לפי החשבון. ואל יבטיח יצרך שהשאול בית מנוס לך, שעל כוחך אתה נוצר ועל כוחך אתה נולד ועל כוחך אתה חי ועל כוחך אתה מת ועל כוחך אתה עתיד לתת דין וחשבון לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Okay, he would also say, those who are born will die.
Just letting you know, Kirk, when we don't have a name, when it says Hu Haya Omer, it means the person we spoke about previously. That means Rabbi Meir in this case. No, Rabbi Akafar in this case.
Okay. So he would also say, those who are born will die and the dead will live. The living will be judged to learn, to teach, and to comprehend that he is God. He is the former, he is the creator, he is the comprehender, he is the judge, he is the witness, he is the plaintiff, and he will judge. Blessed is he, for before him there is no wrong, no forgetting, no favoritism, and no taking of bribes. Know that everything is according to the reckoning. Let not your heart convince you that the grave is your escape. For against your will you are formed, against your will you are born, against your will you will live, against your will you will die, and against your will you are destined to give a judgment and accounting before the King, King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be he.
Ooh, wow. Intense to send your kid to sleep with this. Good night.
Yeah.
I want to see, how do they translate who he is? 1 second. To teach that he is God. Hua Yotzer, he is the former, he is a creator. Okay, fine.
Former.
Yeah, Kirk.
Well, one of the interesting things, and this is, I don't know how relevant this is, but I actually did hear that there are some scientists who predict that we'll actually be able to beat death one day through CRISPR, because if CRISPR can regenerate cells, we might be able to reverse aging. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I heard this from some scientists.
This is true, and also apropos to my to our conversation over here, there's a scientist called Sinclair. I'm forgetting his first name, but he works heavily on longevity.
Is he Israeli?
No. He's, I think, Australian. He's been on the Lex Friedman Project's podcast, I think, twice, and he was on Joe Rogan, I think, once. But they've managed to reverse aging in mice. They managed to reverse blindness in mice, and he has all these different kinds of stuff. But he's working hard on longevity. I think he believes that we're going to be living in a 40-year-old body till around like 150, 160 years old, or something like that. So all eventually die. So this would seem obvious, but there's like a deeper sense that the Mishnah is, of course, trying to reach it over
but
here.
Maybe not.
I'm sorry?
I mean, from a scientific perspective, if we could reverse aging, maybe not.
Well, I'm saying let's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Right now, seemingly all die, but this is more of like a philosophical question, which is entropy versus complexity, right? So, like, is this something that, like, are we destined to just crumble eventually, and that's the way of the world, or do things get more complex and eventually we could, like you just said, with CRISPR, we move on to this place where there's no death. And that really brings us to the next line, which is V'hametim la'achayot, right? And this is, in a certain sense, letting us know that the dead will rise, as we believe as Jewish people. And it's also sort of letting us know, we all know the story of the Garden of Eden and the two trees. And, they say, quickly, make sure they don't eat from the tree of life, because then they won't die. And it almost is like telling us in a sort of backhanded way that perhaps death was never natural, right? This is something that we could have avoided and potentially still can. And we learn this in a deep sense from the first words of the Bible, Bereshit bara Elohim, right? So if we believe that God started the creation, then we also believe he has a plan for the end of the creation, right? It doesn't end with just the lights out. However, there's a deep sense over here where we're trying to see, is this something that we could one day avoid, more than just that we get there's Tchiyat HaMetim, there's the resurrection, but is this a sign that we could potentially beat because it's not natural to us? The Maharal famously said, using the pasuk Somech Hashem lechol hanoflim, right, that God is the stability. All who fall lean on him, basically. So in a sense, he's saying, yes, it's entropy. We all fall. We're all destined to fall. However, and that happens naturally. However, God keeps us up, right? God, in his loving intervention, is keeping us up constantly. Yes, go ahead, Kirk.
Who's the Maharal?
There's who is the Maharal? Is that what you ask?
Yeah.
The Maharal is the famous Maharal mi Prague, Rav Yehuda Lau, son of Betzalel. And he is, there's the famous story of him making the golem of Prague. My father was in a synagogue and managed to find some like ancient, from like the 1400s, some like Maimonides edition that he brought home. He's very proud of that, even though in retrospect he could have been arrested. But he's a cowboy. So yeah, he's definitely a heavy hitter. Interesting rabbi. So
Kabbalist.
Yes. And he was over 40. I think he was over 40. Yeah. So okay. So we spoke about that little philosophical divide. Generally speaking, we're being told over here that be aware of the circle of life and understand that it doesn't end at death, right? Because like you think it ends at, we're saying that's end of phase one. It's obviously important to be aware of that so you could orient yourself properly, right? In a certain sense, this is a continuation of prepare yourself. Right? Make sure you are prepared in the foyer so you can go into the great hall. So here too, you have to be aware that people die and the dead come back. So recognize how to orient yourself properly. Being aware of this is, if at the very least, is reminding you of God's greatness. And I've mentioned this in the past. Here's also a sort of nudge towards the reverse birthday. Really, when you're born, it's sort of like a sad day because the clock starts ticking until you die. But at death, in reality, there's a part of it that should be happy because we know that now you'll come back from here. So you're really entering phase two. And like I said about my grandfather, my 100-year-old grandfather, may he live and be well. He is excited for chapter 2. And I don't think his funeral, while it will be sad, I'm sure many of us will be smiling as well. V'chaim lidon, and life will be judged, right? We're told that now, we'll be told this again. So here too, there's a certain sense, which is, what does that even mean that our life, we're going to be judged? So there is a famous debate between Antoninus and Rabbi Yehuda in their conversations that they had their very unique relationship. And Antoninus believed that there is the soul body combo at that time, as far as like the way the Greeks thought, it's not natural. That combination is not natural, earthly and heavenly, and hence we have the fall. And his question is, perhaps we shouldn't have been born at all, right? Because anyways, it's not a good mesh. Why are we even doing this? However, Rebbe, he gives this example. He gives a story of the king that has, is it an orchard or a field? Whatever. He has this big field. And the guards of this field are a blind man and a handicapped person. A gimp. He doesn't have his legs. And though they're both watching over the garden, and they both steal. And then he comes to judge them, and one of them says, it couldn't have been me because I can't see. And one of them says, it couldn't be me because I can't walk. So the king decides to judge them together as one unit. One of you could walk, one of you could see, and I'm judging you together. And in a certain sense, what Rebbe is saying to Antoninus is, yes, we recognize that Adam and Eve, there was a transgression over there, that there was a fall. However, we need this fall because it allows us, with this tension, to reach higher heights. And this is something we discussed last week as well, Ben, with regards to, not jumping in front of the mourner when his death is lying in front of him, or someone dealing with anger. These points of tension, the Torah wants us to deal with them internally. So this whole life, in a certain sense, is taking the natural, the mundane, so to speak, of our human body, connecting it with our human soul. And while they seemingly don't fit well, through a life of Torah and good deeds, we manage to find a blend that is then worthy of being judged by God.
Right. It's the dangerous yet natural process of a descent for the sake of ascent.
Yeah, I've been told one of the reasons for fasting on Yom Kippur is the idea that so on Yom Kippur, nominally you're supposed to be judged by God, but in order to be judge your spirit, you need to afflict your body.
Right. So there you're doing a combination over there, which is one that's going to correct, that's going to lead you, and you have to recognize when to do that dance, right? When you're stressing more the spiritual, when you're stressing more the physical, only to then embolden and move the spiritual forward. So right. So we want to do those things consciously and carefully. Again, just with regards to this tension, there are 4 who died and did nothing wrong. Shemetu be'ityo shel nachash. Be'ityo shel nachash means they died due to the sin of the serpent, meaning they died because, there's death in this world, and that's why they need to die. However, they did nothing wrong. And these people are Benjamin, the son of Jacob, and Amram, the father of Moses, Jesse, Yishai, the father of King David, and Kilav, the son of David. And what's interesting over here is, while these individuals didn't sin, either their fathers or their sons did sin.
Yeah.
And so we know Moses sinned, we know Jacob sinned, we know David sinned, and their parents didn't. So their parents, in a certain sense, are this place where there isn't this tension. However, their sons, whether it be the rabbi of the nation of Israel, or the father of the nation of Israel being Jacob, or the king of Israel, nation of Israel being David, all these people, to move forward, still require to sin in a certain sense. And by that I mean they had to live in that tension to move forward. Okay. Then we have this very interesting line over here: Leyada, Lohodia, Ulehivada. Right? And it's all like the same word over here. So here again, Chazal has in the past, I think we did this a few portions ago, but we see that Leyada is talking about the baby that will be born. We should let him know these things. Lohodia, to currently announce, is for the living. Velehivada, so we should let them know in the future, those that will rise from the dead. There's other interpretation that this is just stressing the fact that we need to make sure that we ourselves know these stuff and we teach the others themselves. And again, there's a different game of this is happening in the world to come. This is happening now. But the sense is that in all different ways of knowing, in the future, in the present, in the past, letting others know, making sure you know, it's really trying to make sure it's crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's with regards to your recognition that these are things that are happening in the world around you, and there's a hierarchy to these things as well. And what is this thing that we have to know?
Well, it's also probably a way of to learn, to teach, and comprehend. Is it could be also a process in terms of you learn, and then you try to teach, and you learn, and then by teaching you also comprehend more deeply.
Correct. And so once you figured it out, you could teach it to yourself, and then you could teach it to others, right? So I'm with you. And the thing that we need to be teaching, the thing the mission is stressing that we need to be teaching is Shehu El, Hu Yotzer, Hu Boreh, Hu Mavinu, Adayan, Hu Ed, Hu Bal, Hu Adayan, Hu Atid Ladun. ברוך הוא שאין לפניו לא עולה ולא שכחה ולא משוא פנים ולא מקח שוחד, שהכל שלו, ודע שהכל לפי חשבון, ואל יבטיחה יצרך שהשאול בית מנוס לך, שעל כוחה אתה נוצר, ועל כוחה אתה נולד, ועל כוחה אתה חי, ועל כוחה אתה מת, ועל כוחה אתה עתיד לתת דין וחשבון, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Sorry, I went through that quickly. That's what they want us to learn. So first of all, like we said, who היה אומר, why do we have over here, how do they say this in English? He. So why do we keep on saying he? So eight, let us know it's all the same God. Right? We're not talking about different gods over here. We're talking about that God, he, who. And then it starts with Shehu Ha'el. El is letting us know it's abstract, right? He is abstract. Nevertheless, he is also the former, the creator, right? He's still, even though he is abstract, he's an El, he is still interested in engaging with us in this world. And then it's curious over here, that's why I asked to see how it's English, the difference between Hayotzer veHaboreh. And in English, it's he is the former and he is the creator. And in English, in Hebrew at least, Yetzira is direct and Bria is indirect. So we have like the verse, Yotzer Or, creating of the light, Uboreh et HaChoshech. So the light is being created, Yotzer is direct. God says, let there be light. However, the darkness is indirect because it's the creation of the lack of light. Right? So
walk me through this because I'm thinking of other things as well. So like in relation to this. But so is the Bria is indirect?
The Bria is indirect. The Yetzirah is direct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So it's just breaking down for us, refamiliaring ourselves with God for a second. So it's the abstract God, but he's nevertheless interested in us. He is the direct creator, but he's also the indirect creator. So we recognize he created all this good for me, which means that there was also, because of that, there's a lack also, which he's involved in, but it's not direct, as in God is not, when we talk about evil, is God creating evil or is God creating good, which leaves space for there to be evil? There's like different intentionality levels over there. Hu hamevin, hu hadayan, hu ha'ed, hu ba'al din, hu atid ladun. So we're basically letting us know these are all these aspects of God, what are making him the most qualified to judge us, right? We're being told over here that we're going to be judged. However, we're saying, listen, and you should recognize this is the guy that's going to be judging you, God who's going to be judging you fully comprehends. He is the judge. He is also the witness. He has a stake. He is like Hubal Adin. He has a stake himself inside this judgment as well. So we're letting you know that you're getting someone that is aware of the full spectrum of the world and anything that has to do with you specifically. So again, it's not random, and he's the most qualified. And he also has requirements from us that he demands from us. Hence, he is part of the final judgment, right? It's not that he's just judging you as someone that is not connected. Rather, he himself is the one that asks you to do certain things. So hence, he's definitely has a vested interest in this judgment, so to speak. And then we say, "She'en lefanav lo avla v'lo shichecha v'lo maseh panim v'lo mekach shochad." So there's nothing in front of him that we're like, oh, he forgot something, he's not aware of it, and there's no maseh panim, which means like we can't go and say like, oh, listen, God, you have to understand this is like a very important person, right? God obviously doesn't care about any status games. And the lo mekach shochad, the bribery over here, which is interesting. You'd say like, of course there's no bribery because like God needs nothing, so why would I need it to be bribing him? Now, some say that what's bribing him over here is the good deeds that I do, I'm going to swap them for the bad deeds, basically. I'm going to say like, listen, God, I know I have a list of like 100 bad deeds, but I have on the other side, I have a list of 300 good deeds. So, it's all good. How about take some of these good deeds and let me come in to the pearly gates, so to speak. However, there are some that interpret and say that good deeds have their own formula, as in good deeds don't cancel out bad deeds. You could have 5,000 good deeds and 100 bad deeds, but that doesn't mean that bad deeds don't have their own calculation that might still put you into the doghouse. So
yeah, we just covered this actually in the book club too, talking about the Kabbalah of forgiveness, and he gives the Kabbalah of forgiveness, the other book club, and he gives a parable that maybe would be helpful in terms of how there is a king, and the king has two halls. One hall is all decked out; it's beautiful. Everything is gold, and he brings in all of his servants, everybody that did good things for him. He brings them in, gives them food, and everything is nice. And the other hall is gray. It's not really, there's nothing much. It's kind of like a doctor's waiting room. And he brings there all the people that have done, everybody that's done the bad deed or people who have done wrong, and spend time there according to what they did. But then in the good hall, nothing of the bad deeds that people did is mentioned. So there's always this separation. There's never an entanglement of both of those things. So if you are rewarded something, you are giving that without any kind of.
So that's what they're alluding to. So in theory, if you thought otherwise, you'd be able to use those good deeds, quote unquote, to bribe God, right? To tell him like, hey, there's enough good over here. Having said that, we of course recognize that God is merciful and loving and understanding, and that's what we're going to say. Like God Himself understands where you had intentions, where you didn't have intentions, what the context was. So rest assured, if there's good deeds to be found, or there's mercy to be had, the Judge of all, the Creator of all, is obviously very aware of this as well. So He will judge you honestly. Shakol shelo v'da shakol lefi hacheshbon. Right, so God's calculation are all inclusive, and they control for everything, which I basically just said. So He is fully aware that last week you got angry because you were stressed because of your mom, and 2 weeks ago you did that bad deed because you were just overwhelmed by jealousy. And He knows how to quantify that, how overwhelmed you were, and does it have to do with Trump? He's aware of all those things, right? God's on the up and up. He could handle such intricate and complicated details. Yes, go ahead.
There's this Netflix show. I forgot the name of it. It was really, I haven't watched it in a while, but I did watch the first couple episodes of it. Basically, in it, the idea is when you die, there's a computer. There's not really a god, but there's a computer machine which scores up your good deeds and your bad deeds and sends you to heaven and hell accordingly. It sounds like the description of God, taking everything into account. I see some parallels there. I forgot the name of the show though.
The Good Life?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right, so God by us does it a little differently. Okay. This is very interesting. Shashol beit manos lecha. How is it said in English?
Let not your heart convince you that the grave is your escape.
Right. Okay. So the grave is your escape. So this is to let you know that death isn't the end, basically. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to what we said earlier. So you could be thinking listen, I was a bad dude, but now once I close my eyes, it's over. And at least there'll be the eternal rest. And God says there isn't an eternal rest. Don't assume at least then I could clock out. There's going to be a talking to as well. So it's interesting because it sort of lets you into the head of, let's say, the wicked or sort of the despaired, right? That they'll feel at the very least I have death waiting for me.
Right, and it also kind of speaks to, connects to what was said before. It was He will judge. So then this is part of the judgment as well.
Right, and what we said earlier, recognize that the ones that died, and that's why it's sort of, right? For my grandfather in this case, don't assume oh, now I could finally rest, right? Not only should you in your sense be excited or nervous, just you're entering phase 2. Right. Phase 2 doesn't end at death. And then we're finish off with this very intense line, right? That we're basically saying over here, that we'll read this in English. that for against your will you are formed, against your will you are born, against your will you live, against your will you will die, and against your will you are destined to give judgment and accounting before the King, King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Right. So we've spoken about hakol tzafui v'rashut natuna. Right. So everything's known, but yet we still have some wiggle room in the joints. But this is, while there's choice for a lot of our actions in our life, right? A lot of our life is thrusted upon us.
Right.
And we have to realize that judgment is part of that game and it can't be escaped, right? You can't decide to be like, oh, I really tried really hard. I used my free will in the best way and I got out of this. There's no escaping this judgment. And judgment doesn't mean, like we said, something bad. Judgment means allowing us to move on. It allows us to connect soul and body. It allows us to get to reach super high heights, but we need to be seen for what we've done. And in a certain sense, you know, it seems unfair, right? I wasn't asked to be born and now I'm here right now. And yes, I know you're giving me some wiggle room, but like my color of my eyes, how tall I'm going to be, and yes, in CRISPR, we'll see, maybe I'll be able to choose more of those stuff. But right now, all of these things were thrusted upon me. There is a discussion with the rabbis in Chazal that talks about how, like after the first 40 days, that's when like life really begins, because that's sort of when the nerves start coming into play. However, we should ask, like, what about insemination, right? Like, why is that not the beginning? And Chazal says that God asks all creations before he brings them into this world. He asks them, do they want to come? Now, I don't know. We could depend on that. Like, I don't remember being asked, so to speak, but we'll use this analogy just because of the army. By the way, Ben, were you in the army? Yeah, where were you?
Within Sadeh.
Okay. Oh, look at you, fancy guy. Okay. Field intelligence is it's a big deal. So I'm a paratrooper. I'm sure you've known paratroopers who in the army, we call them sneffim. And they are all, I got to go into the paratroopers. I want to be in the paratroopers. This is what I want. This is what I'm working for. Since I'm in high school, he's doing this is what he wants. And then he gets into the paratroopers. But then when he's standing on the precipice, like on the plane, about to jump off, suddenly he's like, well, I'm nervous, right? Like, do you remember all those calls about, I want to be here, I want to be here, I want to be here, I want to be here? So in a certain sense, we don't really remember at that time where we said we want to be the paratrooper. We want to be involved. Our soul's saying we want to be here. Having said that, once we're standing on the plane and we're looking down, it seems like we had no choice, or it seems like, how do we get to this position?
Right.
So obviously, once we remind ourselves that of all these things that we just read right now, of who God is, how judgment works, what he's expecting from us, and the previous things we said about preparing yourself in the foyer, it means the little, so to speak, free will that you do have, you should take it very seriously and use it with care, because all the other things have been controlled for. So God is telling you, like, here within the limited choice you have, these are the best routes towards me. Yes, Kirk, the floor is.
What I was going to ask is, so this week's Torah portion is Shemot. It's the